it to you.
Thank you, Jordan. Thanks everybody for joining us and welcome. First off, I want to thank the Chinese Culture and Community Service Center for inviting me and the county executive, several council colleagues, a number of other local officials for a huge turnout for their Lunar New Year event at Montgomery Mall, Westfield, Montgomery this past weekend to celebrate the Year of the Dragon. It was a great event. Good to be at the mall with all of the Lunar New Year festivities. And so really appreciated that. Last week, as many of you know, we commemorated a proclamation with myself, Kristen Mink, the first Asian American AAPI council member in the county's history, as well as the county executive. And we've had a number of events throughout the community to celebrate the Lunar New Year with our AAPI community, a community that now makes up 16% of the county's population, which has seen tremendous growth and has been such a huge part of the strength and diversity that we have in Montgomery County, something that we are very proud of and something that we deeply appreciate. Switching gears, as you know, on Thursday, the Joint Audit and Education and Culture Committee held an oversight meeting with the Inspector General, Megan Lamarzi, the Board of Education President, Carla Silvestri, Interim Superintendent, Dr. Monique Felder, and senior MCPS staff members to discuss the handling and investigation process related to complaints of misconduct by MCPS employees. Many of you have asked many questions about that in previous weeks, and we want to assure the public that this is not the end of our efforts to push for more accountability and transparency at Montgomery County Public Schools. The public school system is our most indispensable resource. It's something that impacts not just the 1 in 4 residents who send their kids to public schools each and every day, but to all of our residents. Our economy, our property values, our quality of life are so intrinsically tied to the strength and success of our public school system. It's why most families want to move here. It's why most people want to stay here. It's why most businesses decide to locate and invest here. And so everything rides on us getting to the bottom of the issues and to getting this right. And I will continue to be committed, as will all of my colleagues on the county council, to hold the school board and the school system accountable to ensure the level of transparency that our residents expect and deserve, and to ensure that we have a workplace environment at MCPS for the 25,000 people who go to work there every day that is safe, and that issues are being resolved and addressed, that complaints, particularly those about misconduct and sexual harassment, are investigated, including anonymous complaints that historically had not been addressed. I'm proud of the work that we've spent over the last 5 years to strengthen the Office of the Inspector General. Together with colleagues last year, we added 2 investigator positions specifically devoted to additional oversight for our public school system. We would not have been in the position that we are with the information that we have without the work that we have done up to this point to add to the level of oversight that we have done. We have commissioned, in one of my first acts as council president, a report by the Office of Legislative Oversight to look at all of the reporting that MCPS does, and to ensure that we are looking at best practices to see if there are reports that MCPS is not doing, that other similarly sized jurisdictions are doing, that we can use as a best practice. Look at whether or not those reports are actually being utilized to provide the level of oversight that we need. We'll continue to have ongoing check-ins with the Inspector General as part of her work. We know that she's coming back in 90 days. We'll have another joint committee session shortly thereafter, immediately following that ultimate check-in, to ensure that the recommendations are being followed through on, that the changes that we are hearing about and that have been committed to are actually happening. We know, as part of the Inspector General report, that many of the issues that were identified were not addressed. The changes were not made. And we want to make sure that this time is different, and we're going to ensure that it is with the follow-up that we do in joint committee and committee sessions, and also with the additional work having the OIG involved. That has not been the case previously with the Inspector General involved with the 2 dedicated positions to MCPS. That is a change, and that is something that we are going to lean into to ensure that these issues are addressed. We want to make sure that the issues of the past, including a school system that appeared by most accounts to be more focused on reputational harm than actual harm, and in protecting the school system over the people who work and go to school in it every day. That must change. That is a cultural change, not just a personnel change and not just a policy change. And we're going to follow through and make sure that that change happens so that public trust can be rebuilt and restored, and so that those who go to school and go to work there every day can feel safe and feel supported and can have the chance to be successful that we know that they deserve. Tomorrow, just a quick update on our council session coming up. We have a number of items on the agenda. We'll be voting on zoning text amendment 2311 and its companion subdivision regulation amendment. These are legislative initiatives that I have spearheaded and sponsored that represent common sense reform to support a variety of local businesses, including home-based childcare, including home health practitioners and other home businesses, as part of a continued effort to cut bureaucratic red tape and reduce regulatory burdens, so we can make it easier to start and build businesses in Montgomery County, where conditional use was converted to limited use. Standards are included in the code that must be met, consistent with previous findings and requirements. We worked hard with the hearing examiner, with the planning department over the course of a year to reduce unnecessary steps and better synchronize the hearing examiner and planning process to make these issues easier, to have a more streamlined process for these businesses. And I'm looking forward to moving that forward tomorrow with the support of colleagues. We'll also be taking action on expedited bill 3823, which is the right of first refusal bill, which would require an owner of a rental housing property, when selling the property, to send a notice to third party, including the county, the Housing Opportunities Commission, and other qualified entities. The county can choose whether to accept the offer to take the right of first refusal in order to preserve affordable housing, or for the issue, the deal to move forward. It's a critical tool in the toolkit to preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing, something that we and other jurisdictions across the country have utilized, and it's part of the broader tools to address the housing challenges that we face. There's also two new bills that are going to be introduced. One's Bill 324, late night establishments, hours of operation. This would define a hookah lounge under county law and set restrictions on the operating hours for these establishments. This is an effort aimed at curbing the increases in police activity in certain areas with higher calls for violent crime in particular, as determined by the Montgomery County Police Department. There's also a bill on the agenda, Bill 424, Community Reinvestment and Repair Fund, commission established. This would establish the commission to help disperse grants to community-based organizations working in low-income communities to follow through on the changes to the cannabis laws and the legalization of recreational cannabis. We are required to do this under state law to create this entity, and this will allow us to move forward with how these funds are dispersed and distributed. And then, of course, we'll continue our work on the capital budget, the $5.8 billion in total capital investments over the 6-year period for fiscal years 2025 to 2030. We have major challenges in the fiscal budget that we're going to have to grapple with. The executive has proposed a capital budget that identifies the need for reductions, but doesn't identify specifically what those reductions are. And so the council is going to have to work through those fiscal constraints and determine how we're going to move forward in a sustainable and fiscally responsible way, and prioritize what we have within the capital budget. So with that, let me open it up to questions. I'll turn it back to you, Jordan.
Thank you, Council President. Reporters, just a friendly reminder, if you have any questions, note that in the chat, or you can raise your hand. Up first, we have Tom Fitzgerald from Fox 5. Good morning, Tom.
Morning, Council President. We appreciate the briefing. Just want to bite off a small portion of Thursday. You've got a part-time board that makes about $25,000 a year that oversees a $3.2 billion budget. It's a huge entity. There was some conversation the other day about making the Montgomery County Board of Education a full-time board. That perhaps the problems that have been identified, especially in the Inspector General's report, may be the result of these people not being on the job all the time. Do you have a position on that? Could the council, in your view, move, or do you have the ability to move in the direction to make the Board of Education a full-time entity? And if not, who?
We don't. The state does. That's a state function. The Board of Education is established under state law as a duly elected board overseeing the local education system. I have said before, I'm open to that. The current structure is not working. And so we need to make changes to the current structure, whether that's additional pay, whether that is moving from part-time to full-time, whether that is adding to the staffing capacity, because ultimately the Board of Education relies heavily, almost exclusively, with only a small number of exceptions, on MCPS staff, which is hard to give oversight, from the staff who you are overseeing, or a combination of all of those things. So the answer is, I think everything should be on the table. The state would have to step in and make those changes. Of course, our state General Assembly are part-time and they oversee a very big budget themselves. I know that there are some sensitivities and dynamics there that have to be grappled with. But it's clear that the current dynamic that we have of oversight is not functioning at the level that we need it to. The county council, I think, has stepped up and has provided additional levels of oversight by expansion of the Inspector General, adding the 2 new positions, doing these oversight hearings, but we are limited in what our role is and what our access to information is and what our statutorily allowed responsibilities are under state law. And so I do think that we need to be working together to come up with solutions largely at the state level in terms of the structure and the oversight.
Just follow and then I'll end. I know you have a legislative briefing today with the delegation. Is this something that is going to be discussed today with your state representatives? Not only what was determined in the Inspector General's report, but moving forward, these kinds of changes, possibly looking at a full-time board?
There are definitely conversations that are happening among council members and delegation members, especially in the aftermath and the follow-up from Thursday's hearing. I don't believe it will be on the agenda today. We're focused on taking positions on specific bills, and there's no specific bill that is before us to take a position on this issue. But as you know, several colleagues have mentioned their interest in pursuing changes. I think there's still questions of what those changes would be and what is the best way to address the challenges, but it is clear that the current board structure does not provide the level of staffing capacity and administrative support and efforts to do the type of oversight that we would expect for a $3.2 billion budget. The county council is stepping in to the extent that we can to try to provide additional levels of oversight, to deploy the Inspector General in the way that we have, to provide resources and funding in the way that we have, to lean into the reports, to shine light on those reports. But we need state changes to make further changes to those issues.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Up next, Kelly Lynn with WJLA. Good morning, Kelly. Kelly Lynn with WJLA TV. Okay, I'll give you a few moments. We're going to move on to Jenny Bixby with MoCo 360, and Kelly Lynn will be right back. Unless, Kelly, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, I just wanted to piggyback on some of Tom's questions about this school board. I'm wondering, what you think an appropriate salary might be if we were to have full-time school board members. Also, do you think that they would need additional responsibilities if they were to go full-time? And if so, what responsibilities do you believe that the board should take on?
Well, I think there's plenty of responsibilities as it is to oversee $3.2 billion and our most indispensable public resource, our Montgomery County Public School system. Exactly what the compensation should be, I am agnostic as long as we address the issues. I'm not sure the full-time, part-time question is something that I'm very open to, but don't have a firm position on that. One of the goals here is, do you expand the number of people who would be interested and willing to take on this role? Do you allow for those who are in those roles to have more time to be able to dive into reports? We know that there are a number of reports that either didn't make it to the Board of Education, or if they made it to the Board of Education, were not reviewed at the level that they should be. We know that there are a number of questions that we feel should have been asked that weren't asked. And as a result, many problems have lingered for years. We know that there are a number of identified issues that were raised in previous reports that have not been addressed, have not been resolved. And the Inspector General was very clear on that. That is the most egregious of the issues. So exactly what the level of hours is, exactly what the salary would be, I don't have a specific response to that. There was a task force that looked at this and made some recommendations. I believe the salary that they looked at was $60,000. And that is what I believe Councilmember Glass referenced during the joint committee hearing. But I don't have a personal opinion on what is the right number to land on, or what is the exact part-time versus full-time dynamic to respond with.
And when you talk about it being a state issue, are you saying it is an issue that belongs to the Maryland State Department of Education or another body? Who are you referring to?
No, the General Assembly under state law in the education article sets the salary and the responsibilities for the Board of Education and the local education systems. So
Okay.
we have no role. I mean, just to be clear, we are the funder of the Board of Education, but we don't establish Board of Education entities or how they function. That is established under state law. So in order to change the responsibilities of the Board of Education, the pay of the Board of Education, or the expectations and role of the Board of Education from a statutory standpoint, that would have to happen under state law.
Very good. Thank you so much for taking the questions.
Great, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Jenny Bixby with MoCo 360. Good morning, Jenny.
Good morning, Jordan. Hi, Andrew. I know that there is a lot that is not under the we've discussed that there's a lot that the council cannot control when it comes to the school system, but you and I have discussed how there's been kind of a culture of the school system sending you to file an MPIA. They don't just ask outright, or they don't give you the information outright. We're currently having the issue, myself and my colleagues, where we can't get any information on Dr. McKnight's severance, and we can't get any information on the plans for the hiring of a permanent new superintendent. So we've had to file an MPIA request. What do you think that says about, first of all, has the council asked for any of this information? And second of all, what do you think this says about transparency going forward?
Well, I spoke a bit about transparency and accountability at the hearing, as you know, including in the responses to some of our questions, and including in the 11th hour response to our months-long repeated request of the unredacted report, the Jackson Lewis report. So I think that the responses, and I think that action speaks to a lack of transparency and a level of accountability that needs to improve. That is not acceptable in this environment. And I have said before that the Public Information Act is intended to provide sunlight to the public, not to reduce it, to not withhold information from the public, but to ensure that the public has adequate access to public information. Now, there are reasonable exceptions. There are protections that are in there to protect victims, for instance, and people who are under investigation so that they have rights to due process. I respect that. We have provided space in our requests to follow the law. But the fact that the Jackson Lewis report in a different form was provided, albeit way later than I would have preferred and that colleagues would have preferred, demonstrates that there is a level of discretion here in following the law to provide much more information than has historically been provided. We're going to continue to push and to advocate for better sharing of information. It's not and should not be a situation where the school system only shares what they are legally required to share and nothing more. They should share as much as they legally can share and nothing less.
Mhm.
And the challenge is to change that culture and that expectation. I believe that Thursday was a step in that direction to change that, but there is more work that needs to be done. There's no doubt about that.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. Up next, we have Judith Cruz with Greater Olney News. Good morning, Judith.
Good morning. I have received more calls than I can count from parents over the years, well before this began, back in August. And some council members alluded to this at the hearing on Thursday. But they say that it's not the hours, it's not the number of people, it's not how much money they're making. They just want the people who are in those jobs to be accountable for what they're supposed to be doing. Parents have long complained about the principal of Farquhar Middle School, the way he treats them when they walk into the schools, the things he has said to them, and they could get nowhere in even explaining their situation to anyone. No one would really ever listen to the way they thought they were being treated, and they were afraid to go much further because they did not want their children to in some way fall prey to any sort of bad attention. So what, putting aside adding more money to the budget so that we could up the, hours or the number of people, how do you react to just, people who apparently have not been doing their job?
Well, it's a fair criticism and a concern. I would say that you heard from colleagues as well. It's not necessarily a resource issue overall. It's a resource allocation issue. And one of the challenges is there have been many new positions created in the central office. The question is whether or not some of those positions should exist for the Board of Education and whether or not those positions should be to serve an oversight role to ensure that things are functioning the way that they should, whether there should be more focus on the in-classroom and instructional dynamic versus the administrative functions, whether the folks who are actually providing support and oversight to principals on the ground, whether or not they are resourced in the way that they should. So to me, it's not necessarily just a dollars and cents. It's a strategic question of where are we investing the dollars in the public school system and whether or not we are receiving the level of oversight that is necessary and whether we are getting the type of outcomes that we need. And we need to move forward with an outcomes-based approach. We need to move forward with an oversight approach where we're not just providing funding for things and assuming things are going to happen with no level of oversight, but we're actually providing the level of oversight that is needed. That hasn't happened to the level that we are comfortable with and we want. And ultimately, I think it speaks to the concerns that you're hearing from residents. But it's not necessarily just a situation where we provide more money. We provided historic levels of funding in this year's budget, and the issues have not been resolved. So it's beyond just a funding issue. it's a management and leadership issue. And I think most importantly, it's a cultural issue. And that cultural issue has spanned multiple school boards. It's spanned several superintendents. It's a cultural issue that needs to be fixed in order to build the public trust that we need to provide the resources that the school system requires in order to move forward. Those are public dollars. Taxpayers need to feel confident that their dollars are going to the places where they're needed the most to actually support students, to get the outcomes that they need, to support educators, to provide the education that we know our young people deserve.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. I don't see any more questions. Oh, we have one.
I think I see one.
Yeah. Miriam Shazad with MyMCM. So you just raised your hand.
Thank you. Yes, just raised my hand last minute. But Council President, you're talking about a cultural change that needs to happen within the school system. What is that going to take? Is that policy and procedural changes, or is it something deeper and more?
It's deeper and more. I mean, policy and procedure changes are important, but there are policies and procedures that have happened. There have been reports that have happened that haven't been followed through upon. And so it needs to be a cultural expectation that is set at the highest leadership level within the school system, at the Board of Education, that is demanded from the superintendent, and that is expected among everybody who works within the school system. Everybody who works within the school system should feel like there is a level of accountability. They should be given the tools that they need to succeed. They should feel safe. They should feel supported. But ultimately, there has to be a level of accountability. And that is about feeling comfortable and confident going to school every day. Whether you're an educator, you're a staff member, you're a student, you're a parent. As of right now, there are too many people who go to school every day in our public schools who don't feel safe, who don't feel supported, and who aren't in a position to succeed. That requires a cultural change. Policies, procedures alone won't fix that. They're part of the solution. They're a start to the solution, but ultimately it's a cultural change that is required.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miriam. Reporters, if you have any other last-minute questions, you can note that in the chat or raise your hand. I'll give you a few moments. Going once. Any last-minute questions? Going twice? 3 times? Okay. None. Back to you, Council President. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate all of your interest in these issues. Obviously, there is nothing more important than our public school system. All of us are responsible for getting this right. I really am appreciative of all of the work. I will say that the entity that has done more on this than any other is the local media. We've relied on you to get reports, to understand what's happening, to speak with folks who are willing to speak to you that might not otherwise be willing to speak to others, and just want to express my gratitude for the diligence and the professionalism of our local media to do the work that you've been doing on this issue and others. It has helped us do our job, and hopefully we can continue to lift each other up and to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable and providing the type of public education system that our residents, our students, our educators, our families and taxpayers deserve. So thank you so much, and hope to see you all tomorrow.